We just want to take a few minutes just to kind of give some updates from the meeting that we had back in December, and as it kind of relates to the building projects that we've got thought out, and kind of just want to bring everybody up to speed. You know, because this is such a sensitive item that's near and dear to all of our hearts, when you begin discussing, you know, those types of related projects, you're typically talking about pretty big ticket items too. So it requires a healthy amount of planning and communication and just a lot of eyes and noggins just to monitor about what's being decided on and what's going to be spent. In December, we hit a number of things that were going on at church. We discussed our financial position, and Frank did a wonderful job just bringing to light the vision of what ultimately the needs and wants of the building and what they are in the immediate, near, and future time frames. Frank and the trustee team have invested a countless amount of hours regarding our property. And this church and our community benefits greatly because of that investment. And I don't think I could say it enough that we're just so thankful to our trustee team for serving God and our church in that capacity. Absolutely. So real quick, I just wanted to, since we're talking about money and all that kind of stuff, I just wanted to bring you up to speed real quick through February. The good news is that not much has changed since December, which that was good news. So that's still good news. So we're, as far as our kind of budgeted and actual giving, we have a plus sign in that column of about $26,000. So we're still in a very healthy position as far as that part is concerned. And I just praise God that He's blessed our church with our tithes. The other side of the balance sheet is church expenses. And again, we have been blessed and are under budget by about $22,000. So again, when you kind of add those two together, you have really a swing and a surplus, if you will, at about $48,000. We still have about $25,000 in our cash reserves, that emergency contingency fund that's not changed. And we have about $36,000 in our money market. And that's down about $3,000 because we made a down payment to Craig's Flooring to start addressing the bare floor that's in the fellowship hall. One of the things that we've done with the money market is we started to split that apart. It's still the money market, but we've got some non-designated funds. And now we've kind of created a line item or a subcategory that are designated funds in the construction project to start kind of addressing some of those things that we're going to need to be doing with that building. And so right now we've kind of allocated that. We've got about $9,000 in the non-designated and about $26,700 in the designated construction project fund. In our operating account, so this is what we just use to pay bills, is at $60,500. So a lot of that surplus again is sitting in that operating account. And as we continue through this budget season, decisions will be made as far as how we begin to allocate those funds, maybe back into those types of savings accounts and things like that. We still have the other assortment of funds, the allocated funds of $3,000, staff development of $3,500, and a savings of $4,600 as well. So one of the real neat things that came around the first of the year was that we had an anonymous donation of $20,000 come in, and that has been attributed to our balance to our mortgage. So again, just love how God works. I mean, He just blesses us over and over and over again, and I just love the fact that He plays that such role in other people's lives like that. So just blessed. So that brings our balance as of February on our mortgage down to $104 and $117. So that's continuing to go down, and we also, Cheryl, can I share that other news? So we had another anonymous donation of $60,000, and so it's overwhelming to me when I hear of things like that, just how God puts it on people's hearts. And it's inspiring. So, but there's some, not stipulations or anything, but there's, 30,000 of it's to be dedicated toward our mortgage, and then 4,000 for staff development, and 26,000 towards the construction and the fellowship that we're going to be addressing. So again, we just continue to be blessed in many, many ways. So that's good news there. Frank had talked about, or kind of opened up the conversation as it related to the fellowship hall that it's in real serious disrepair. I mean, you can kind of look at it, and it looks dated, but when you start to look at some of the details of it, and I mean, take time to talk with Frank for 5 minutes, and you'll find out that there's just a lot of needs that need to be done. And if we don't do something soon, and he alluded to that, then we could be in some serious trouble as far as what additional costs could then be impacted by not doing something. So just the structure as a whole has just got pressures, and again, things that sometimes you can see and things that you can't, and they just have to be dealt with. There were some other things that deal with the interior that can be dealt later, but we really wanted to get to a place where we were, in about this time of this year, where we're starting to move forward, moving on to these additional phases that Frank had discussed about conceptual ideas and thoughts and things like that about what to do, and actually kind of start to bring them to fruition and supported by, bids and numbers and things like that. So one of the biggest concerns was abandoning the solar space because it's not doing what was originally intended, and it's causing problems really for just people that are using that space. Heat and cooling and things like that just can't be regulated, and it's got to be dealt with. And that led into the heating and air conditioning discussion. And Frank had mentioned that he had just received a bid from Sweetwater Air. And this is the part where I kind of need to pump the brakes a little bit. And we need to talk about that. We have spent, or will be, paying the bill soon for approximately $30,000 on the heating and air conditioning for the fellowship hall. It includes brand new furnaces, AC units, ductwork, thermostats, etc. I've had numerous conversations with folks about this and also the concerns that are related to this expense and how this was, or more so, was not specifically discussed during the meeting in December, and in particular the statements that I made about expenses as it relates to the building and the building projects that are being considered. I stated that we have a huge property, and when you begin speaking about building projects, those things come with big costs. And before we do anything, we would put together all the information, present it to the congregation, have a vote, and then how we attack these projects, whether that includes looking at those costs in different phases, taking out additional loans, using our reserves, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we were going to deal with that. And I'm here to tell you that during the meeting, I neglected to discuss the heating and air conditioning project and the cost of it, and we did have the information at that time. It was an oversight. So on its face, it would appear that we approved a $30,000 project without the congregation's approval, and it would also appear that we overstepped in the statements and commitments that I stated on behalf of the elder board. So you can imagine that this has caused great angst and has weighed heavy on our hearts, because we would never want to put ourselves in a position that would be unbecoming and take away any of the great works that God's doing in his church. So I'm here to ask you that you forgive me and the elder team for not taking the proper steps to include this in our report that night of the meeting. It certainly wasn't done intentionally. However, I do want to take the opportunity to walk you through the steps in which this decision did come about. I think this is extremely important to convey to you the processes and decisions that are made here in our church, for our church, by those placed in these trusted positions to do so, and done according to the policies and procedures that this church has operated for years. In other words, are things still working as designed? In October of last year, the Financial Task Force met immediately after church to discuss the growing concerns of the fellowship hall. And it was determined that the temperature control was no longer functioning, and that had raised to an emergency/urgent type level. And this decision was also confirmed that in order to proceed with any future additional considerations, that portion of the building, that the HVAC system was the first thing that just had to be addressed. So it was recommended at that time to authorize $20,000 to $30,000 to make those necessary improvements. And that was that money that was sitting in that non-designated funds and to be used for exactly those types of situations and those purposes. The financial team asked the elder team to review the request and approve in order to make the needed repairs, and we approved the work to be done. So we did have 12 individuals that were involved in this process to ensure that the proper steps and notifications were made. So much like when a hot water heater goes out, the need arises, the finances are set aside to address such issues, and it gets done without congregation involvement. Now, I'm not, however, comparing a $2,000 hot water heater and a $30,000 heating and air conditioning project as an attempt to make those things equal, because they're not. But through this process, I've discovered that if there was a certain dollar amount, whether it be like $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for an emergency or urgent deemed type expense, that there's really no threshold that exists as to when that would include congregation weigh-in, or at least through the council that I seek to glean that kind of information from through those historical type channels. So that might be worth pursuing going forward, that when we're faced with something like that, that there might be some sort of a threshold. Maybe it's wise, maybe it's not, whatever, that leaves something that we need to probably discuss. So again, I state that all of us are here to serve. We're here to bring honor and glorify God, and I sincerely apologize and ask for your forgiveness that the decisions I just described by the elder team were just anything less than above board. So I'd like to also now transition back to the remaining projects of the fellowship hall and what we are looking at. So Frank mentioned that we will break the list of projects down into different phases: conceptual, design, and build. Now, quite some time, as I alluded, that's been dedicated to the conceptual phase, considering options, ideas about what to do. I think, Frank, you've done, again, a tremendous amount of work collecting ideas, opinions, and things like that to start bringing about a vision. And we're very blessed to have a man like Frank, who that is his, I call it his expertise, and he's phenomenal at it. And so now we're kind of in that design phase, which involves getting some numbers from a contractor, which we have secured Jerry Olson to be the lead contractor on this project, and then to present some numbers to the congregation to get the funding needed to do in either a phased approach, all in one and done. I mean, there's a couple of different approaches that we got to take to that, but we'll see how all that begins to come together, and then together as a congregation we will make those decisions. At this point, I think I do want to take the opportunity to certainly not miss something else, and that's some information that I also learned pretty recently, which was about 12-ish years ago, which predates me. At the time of the discussions regarding the new sanctuary, an overall commitment was made to the congregation then, which was that the church would commit to funding a loan for the new building, this place that we get to sit in, barring that no other loans would be considered until the building was paid off. So that's not been forgotten. And that is a part of the discussions as we move forward with determining what we do, how we pay for these needed building projects. So between now and the presentation of the projects, every one of us will have some time to consider and converse basically on how are we going to tackle this. Questions are, do we uphold that commitment? Do we view that the accomplishments that we have made on the aggressive debt reduction, that we consider a new loan? Do we look at doing some projects, or do we do all the projects together, kind of piecemeal it? Do we do it in 1 year? Do we spread it over 5, 10? I mean, these are all just questions we have to ask ourselves as a body as we continue to look at, and we'll get the collection of what the numbers look like and what these projects entail, and then just make the best decision then going forward. So to recap, the items that Frank and the trustee team are putting together as projects are, again, dealing with the solar space and sealing that up by removing the large windows and putting up solid wall, and then installing new siding for the fellowship hall, and using that Western contemporary look. Frank will be obtaining different kinds of examples, color schemes, texture. How does that tie into the windows? And then there's those other things that we had talked about as well, which is the entryway. How do we maybe move the steps? Signage, because that sign, the banner's going to come down. And then even the sprinkler system and how we take care and maintain our yard. So when you start to look at all that, again, those are big ticket items. Again, on the interior, we don't see a whole lot of changes really at this point, but there are some things that need to be addressed. I mean, right now we're working on the carpet and getting, some carpet squares put down, things like that, which is a great option so that if those things get damaged, the expense is minimal, because now it's just replacing a square versus cutting out carpet and trying to match and all those things. So looking at repurposing the pastor's office into a library, conference room, upgrading the lighting to just some LED fixtures, reconfiguring the kitchen to get some more use out of just that space. So just on and on and on. But with some of these things, just, when you start looking at just reskinning the outside and that solar space, I mean, we're probably looking into that 6-figure, these are big, that's a big construction project. So as we begin to dissect what that looks like for what is, maybe we determine what's absolute needed versus that'd be kind of nice to have, and maybe those differences in amounts. Again, that's something that as a congregation we'll just have to make that decision on. Other things you probably need to take a look at or consider is just the ever rising costs of construction materials. We live in low interest environments right now, and what we could secure loans on and things like that. So again, all these things weigh into what those decisions are. So as we continue to, Frank, do you think, when are we kind of expecting maybe to start looking what that holistic project plan looks like from a time frame standpoint? Right. Right. Who we are. Great, thanks. Okay,
So that one, I have no idea when that's gonna happen.
okay,
But the big ticket item is the metal skin. Also trying to look at, do we replace windows or not replace? These are the small windows on the north side and some of the classrooms. The, as you mentioned, we are grateful to have secured Jerry Olson, who is very familiar with the building, who's willing to assist. But we're also working very closely with Sainer Construction, which is the company that built this facility. They have the metal, they have the machinery, and they also do window glazings. And so it kind of makes it pretty easy to go with the one guys. We asked them to do everything, and then, okay, let's phase it. No windows, or let's only do this part of the building. Let's stop here. Once, and I actually meet with him this coming Tuesday. Jerry and I are meeting with them to help answer more questions so that they can tweak and really fine tune the rest of it.
excellent.
So I would think that we'll start having some information in April, but the construction world is getting very busy in Lander, and even if we met and presented options A and B to the congregation, that might not happen until mid-April. Well, they're not gonna order anything until we sign a contract. So it's gonna be midsummer if we were to start to do anything.
Okay, okay. So, again, we're moving beyond the conceptual phase. I think we've got a great vision about what overall our camp is. Yeah,
And we're trying to, I want that piece of, that look. And part of the intent is to actually bring back samples. You know, it's a tricky thing. It's like, I don't want 100 opinions about what color it should be.
right.
But I'm trying to show people this is what we think it should be.
Yep,
And I don't want to deal with, 15 opinions about what window company we should use, and whether it should be an opening window or a stationary window. You appointed the trustees to make those decisions, and we kind of want to reserve some of that. Not everybody decided what color this place should be, and who should put the beautiful woodwork on here, and what color should the carpet be. There comes a time when you have to just say, you need to trust
we're
me.
going to go with this.
I'm gonna go with this, because I eventually have to tell exactly the contractor so that he can give me his estimate.
Yep, yep. Great, thanks. So we're getting close to, again, and that's why we wanted to propose those questions, because that's just, again, stuff that we're going to have to really be considering and think about, and begin to make decisions on within the next couple of months, and how we then proceed forward. So during that time, as always, the elders of the church are here to, field those types of questions and have discussions about where those things go. So we just encourage you to pick up the phone and give us a call and have those conversations. So,
I'm hearing two questions.
yes,
One, you want approval to purchase the AC units, HVAC material, officially.
that's already been decided. That's already done, because those were considered to be emergency, urgent. That was an emergency type of an urgent situation that we need to move forward on.
I heard from your reading there that you had done it without necessarily getting.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's based on the past, as far as, anything that comes up as an emergency thing, congregation doesn't weigh in on, like, we had a hot water heater that broke last year. And that's what addresses that kind of question as to something that we might need to discuss is, if it's over 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000, at what limit do we put that? And again, there's always lots of eyes that are on this, that this is not any one person's decision, which is what I like about how our church operates. So we have key people in trusted positions and there's lots of eyes and lots of hands on that to make good decisions.
Second question I'm hearing is, what is the future? I guess I
visuals.
Well, yeah, visual, whether it's a board that shows what the committee would like to do or things like this. I'm presuming that the wall vents came in place as part of the heating and air conditioning HVAC system. So,
Yeah, the solar space.
yeah,
Yep, yep.
so, but I haven't seen any discussion of that, visual discussion of that.
And that's something that Frank and I had discussed on, what was that, Friday, right? About having maybe some, with the contractors that we're gonna be using, if they have some conceptual visuals that we'd be able to look at, pictures with that superimposed material that's already put on it. So it kind of gives us an idea of what that actually looks like. So we'll see if we can make that happen. That would
That's what
be
I'm hoping.
neat.
Begin this Tuesday, when I go to Riverton, to hopefully return with some large size samples. The foreman that we're working with has some pretty amazing computer software programs where you can take a picture of a building and superimpose a new texture to the wall and see it. I need to understand that a little bit more. All we know right now is we want it metal sided, zero maintenance.
Yep.
That's all we want.
Yeah. So yeah, we hope to deliver that. So. Yep. That nice Western, I think it's very well put. Contemporary Western, yeah. So, because that's what a lot of the remodels in town that we've seen with buildings that have been updated, they kind of carry along that kind of similar theme. And it would be neat to tie our building into that as well. So, Brett had said it'd be wise to look at the community center and the appearance of what that then looks like, and carrying out that theme here, just like a lot of the other buildings throughout Lander has done. So. The face, gotcha, yeah.
The tie-in would be the wainscoting that we're looking at. The tan metal that you see now would stay. And we make a determination how tall the wainscot should be. They cut the metal, they have called a J-channel strip that slips up underneath. And then I envision a dark bronze type of bottom, and that's put on over the metal skin. It's actually not too involved. Most labor intensive is cutting that strip and inserting this new J-channel underneath there for weather stripping. Right, we wouldn't do anything in the back, anything that's not seen from the highway. Uh, So yes, there's a little section over here that you can see, and, right. And that upper metal that you see here, most likely would be the same ribbed metal that's covering the Pellisher ball outside. And we started to look at a metal board and batten product, which visually changes the rib pattern, but that metal transition strip that ends up being metal would break that. One of the goals was we didn't want it to look like an industrial shop building. And so the wainscoting, different rib patterns would be preferred. Originally, we spoke about maybe a wood transition strip, but speaking with Seinert's crew, they have all kinds of amazing products that are out there now that could make it virtually 100% zero maintenance. Even the window jambs and trim, and that's why I have to go with Jerry and meet
them and look at their products and go online with their web pages. And there's so many options now that the more you get into it, the more you realize, wow, someone's got to
Make your head spin.
it's confusing, yeah. No, no, no. Well, it's in good shape. I mean, to be honest, I've only been up there once, to inspect some wind damage, but, the question was, do we have to replace the roof on the fellowship hall? And the answer is no. It's a metal roof. Yeah, it's a metal roof. So,
There's a question over there.
That's after the 20,000, correct? But that does not include this most recent 30,000. So yeah, that new balance would be right around about 74. Yeah, okay, yeah. So, yeah. Yep. Any other questions or comments or concerns?
I could make a little more clarity, because we are committed with the HVAC system, is that hopefully, I don't know if Wade's still here. There he is. I'm not sure if you have a sense of completion, at least without the AC going in yet, but another week or two? Right, because it's the intent is that the abandoned solar space, which is about a little more than 36 or 40 inches, will become a storage area. And we hope to have, well, one, we have to put a big door so that we can service the new furnace. And that will probably be a double door, so that we can also go into the space. We also envision a second door from the inside, because it's so narrow, you could bring the chairs in from one side and then the other side. There has to be an exterior door on that side. Right now, there's a little half door. But again, you have to have serviceability to the furnaces. And so we'll make that full. And that also could become, I need a place to store the shovels and the wheelbarrow and things like that. So those things have to come in. They're above and beyond Wade's cost. And the other thing is, knowing we're going to remove the glass and build that, we're still tweaking numbers with Jerry on how to do that and what it looks like. But one of the things that's going to happen pretty soon, you'll notice there was some scaffolding assembled here, is that we have to close off the solar envelope because it's just dumping tons of heat, unnecessary heat, and we have to close off the floor grading. And Steve Twitchell helped a lot with getting where the old stage was. We have to sort of stop this random air circulation pattern so that the HVAC system works the way it's supposed to work. And if we don't, one, there's all this excess heat, and two, we're taking air from the crawl space, and it's going to mess up the circulation cycle. So Wade's, that's not on his list. It falls back on the trustees, and some of it's just easy volunteer work that we can do. But it's going to take, that's elevated work. It's a firewall, 5/8 fire rock. I'm donating my time to do that. It's a lot of work. And because the space is so tight, Wade's willing to hold off on putting the return registers, which will go in, until we get the wall up, because we can't even physically work in there. So it's a very tight, labor-intensive project that Jerry and I are facing at some point. So I just want to be upfront about, you can just think, oh, heating and cooling, but there's a lot of little things that are related to that to make it fully operational and functional, so. we've s-
Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'll close this out in prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for you. We're thankful for this building, your house, place where we can come to glorify you, honor you, ever grow so much in you. Lord, we ask that the concerns and the needs of this place are